Hello, everyone, and welcome to Data Collection Overview from SalesPad. So I am Jacob Pegg. I am the product manager at SalesPad. Today, we're going to take a look at data collection, what we have to offer from data collection, what the product does. This is going to be a high level. We're not going to get too technical. We'll look at some technical things, but again, I don't want to bore people. I want to keep this a little more easygoing. So we do have the Q&A turned on, so you can ask questions during the broadcast. This will last about an hour. So I will do my best to watch for those questions and try to answer them as I go along. So don't get frustrated if I don't get to your question right away. But again, I will be watching for those and try to answer those as they come in. So we will have some time at the end of the session that I'll open up for Q&A. And again, it just depends on how I manage my time. So great, let's get started. So we're going to talk about data collection. So data collection is one of the products that we offer at SalesPad. There's numerous different pieces of data collection. So it's an all-encompassing term. So we'll talk about each one of those pieces. This is a two-part series. This is part one of that two-part series. So part one today, we are going to cover just an overview of what data collection is. And then we'll get into more specifics today around data collection console and data collection mobile. Now, so there's four parts or four pieces of data collection. There's DC mobile, there's DC console, there's DC advanced console, and then there's DC WMS. And again, DC stands for data collection. So there's those four pieces. They are DC mobile is included or is part of all of those, or a piece or required for all of those pieces. And so then the data collection console pieces are tiered as far as pricing and functionality and what they do. So DC console is the most basic and offers the most basic functionality. Then advanced console steps up from that, has additional functionality. And then WMS has some very specific pieces and specific requirements around when a customer would want to go to that level. So again, we'll talk about all of those. But today, part one is going to be on DC mobile and DC console. And then part two, which is, I believe, next week, next Wednesday, we will cover advanced console and WMS and what you get, the features and functionality that you get in those pieces. So there are a couple of things on the roadmap coming out for data collection. So we're going to take a look at those real quick. I'm going to flip over and show the roadmap. So we've got two releases of data collection essentially coming out back to back, if you will. So coming out in June, we have our DC4 release. The big thing with this, again, we're announcing our official stance on GP 2015 support. That'll be for 2015 R1 as well. And so that's kind of our official announcement. Again, our current version does support it, but we haven't actually put the word out there yet. So that's there. We also had a big push on stability. We had a large number of issues that we wanted to address. And so those went into or will be available in this June release. And then there's a couple other things there. Smart printing is a big one. We'll talk about that today. And then we also have the manufacturing integration for reverse issue or issue and reverse issue against a pick list. And then issue scrap and reverse scrap against those manufacturing orders. So those pieces will be in there in June. And then August is another big key release for us because that's when we're going to start offering iOS support for data collection. Now, you'll see on the roadmap here, we have functionality. We show what is listed here. So this is what we're looking at right here. So we show the pieces that we will have available initially for iOS. And those pieces, again, will continue to expand the iOS offering. So again, it's a big step for, not a step, but a big piece for us because it gives us some advantages in making data collection a more affordable solution for a lot of customers. So what we want to take a look at here is, so I've got a couple devices. So when we talk about DC mobile, there's really two different ways that you can run data collection. Again, assuming that we have the DC August release. So current and the June release is going to work on a Windows mobile device. So that's something like this. So this is a MC75, I believe. So you'll see it's got a Windows mobile. It's kind of hard to see the screen, but it's running a Windows mobile or Windows OS. So again, this is, like I said, MC75. There's a scan button on it. There's a keyboard on the bottom of it. There's multiple different form factors. This is only one of the manufacturers that we support. So that's one option. Another option is in August with the iOS release is to go with something like an iPod Touch or even an iPad Mini. And so we've got some enclosures that we are using. This is an Ollie. So again, this has a barcode scanner built into it. So this is empty. You would take an iPod Touch, drop it into it, connect it into it, and then you can use that iPod Touch as a scanner. And then we have the same setup for a iPod Mini. So this has the barcode scanner on the side. There's scan buttons on the bottom for you to activate. So again, we've got some customers that are playing around with these now. They work really, really well. Fast scan times, fast response times. Just as a side note, both of the Ollie pieces will also work with our current SalesPad mobile. I don't know if you noticed, it's easier to see on this one. It has a credit card slot. So we do support taking credit card payments off of these devices as well, along with the scanning. Same with this one, it's on the side. So scan slot on the, or a card slot on the side. So when we talk about mobile currently though, these are the types of devices that we are going to be concentrating on for now. So again, Windows mobile devices. So those you will have, or these are things that you would get from a third-party vendor. We don't sell these. We can make recommendations of which ones we would recommend you using. So again, those are, but that's the type of device that we'll be referring to with DC Mobile. So I'm going to flip over and start showing my screen. And we're going to start looking at some of the data collection pieces that we have to offer. Again, another piece that I want to mention as well as I get this switched over. And again, we have the Q&A session turned on. So as you guys are joining, if you have questions, go ahead and ask them at any point. I'll try to answer them as we are going through. But again, don't get frustrated if I don't get to it right away. So everybody should be able to see my screen, I hope. I have a couple of things running here. I have data collection open, and we'll go through the different pieces here. But again, I wanted to make sure that from a data collection standpoint, you guys understand how it works, where it works, what it works with. So data collection is a standalone product for us. It does not require SalesPad. Now, we have some things that work well when SalesPad is involved, like with workflow. But it doesn't require that you use SalesPad. You can run data collection against GP without SalesPad involved at all. So, and again, we've got customers that do that. We have customers that are not SalesPad customers. They're only data collection customers, and it works well for them. The vast majority of our customers that we see running data collection, though, are running it more of like a suite of products. So they have SalesPad, they have data collection, they have Ship2. And again, there are pieces that we do with integrating that into workflow that makes everything work a lot better when you have all of those different pieces. But again, it is a good thing to know that it doesn't require SalesPad. So there's a couple of things with data collection that we want to talk about. From how you can connect your handheld. So I am running it. This is a data collection or Windows emulator that I have running on my machine. This is not the ideal way to run data collection. It's actually a real pain to get it set up and to maintain it. So again, we look back at those devices that I showed earlier. So the Windows mobile device, that's the ideal way. This is the way for me to just show you the functionality on the screen. So those Windows mobile devices have a couple of different ways that you can connect them to your system and have them do the functionality that data collection is meant to do, that DC Mobile is meant to do. So one of the easiest ways, and I'm just going to jump into, this is DC Console, just as the standard console. We have the data collection server, so I'll expand this. So in DC Server, we have the ability to start and stop and run this as a service. And so this is reliant on this screen being open. You have to have the start button started. You'll see once I click it, it grays out start and goes to stop. And once I have that started, I can actually flip over to my console and attempt to log in, and it'll take me to my handheld device, and it'll allow me to log in. This is the easiest, the quickest, and the most basic way to get your handhelds connected to your system. It is not the best way. So again, it is, if you wanted to do some testing or playing around, this is the way to go. If you want to do long-term use of data collection, I would not go this direction. There are other ways to do it that are better. A couple of issues that we have here. One is if someone were to accidentally close this screen, I'm done here. I can't actually do any functionality. So that's one problem that we see quite often. And if you notice, if I go back into it, I'd have to start it again. So that's one thing that we see happens quite often with customers trying to run it this way. You can run this as a Windows service. You'll see that I have the option to install as service. So this will install this as a Windows service. Then it doesn't matter. It takes away the control from this screen. It doesn't matter if this screen is open. It doesn't matter if DC console is open. All that it matters is that Windows machine is running and that service on that Windows machine has been started. And so again, it's a Windows service at that point. Again, that's a better way to do it than running it straight from the data collection server tab. Not the best. Again, there are arguments to be made that that's a good way to do it. Again, we have customers running it that way. The other option that you don't have a way to do it from the console, you actually have to manually set it up, is to run it as an IIS service, and that's our recommended way of doing it. So you actually would set up an IIS. You would have IIS installed on a machine somewhere, preferably a server somewhere. That you would then set up the DC iOS service in your IIS, or I'm sorry, your DC IIS service in your IIS environment. And that is the most stable way that we found running for customers, especially if you have a large number of handheld devices. And so again, there are, our customer base for data collection runs anywhere from one user, they have one handheld and that's it, to, we've got customers that are running 90 handhelds. So again, this is an easily scalable solution, and it's got a low point of entry as far as you're not investing this huge amount of money for a WMS system. Again, the idea behind this is to allow users to automate their warehouse process without breaking the bank. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. It's a very easy and it's an easy way to get into automating a lot of your processing in your warehouse. So we're looking at things like picking, receiving. We have packing functionality. We have receipt confirmation, which we'll talk about in more detail. We have return processing, inventory transfers, inventory adjustments. We have bin transfers. So again, there's a lot of different functionality that we offer from the handheld that allows your users to, or allows you to set up your environment where you can barcode your items, barcode your shelves, run multi-bin out of GP, and allow your users to use data collection to move that inventory, to process those sales transactions, to process your receiving. So again, it is meant for accuracy and efficiency, and that's what our goal for our users would be. So again, I am currently running this way. I don't have it set up as IIS, so I have to start the service here and let it run. So let's back up a little bit. I talked about the types of users. Let's talk about some use cases for data collection. So there are, and again, I'm not going to cover all of them. There are multiple use cases for data collection. But again, there are some very basic ones that we can talk about that make a lot of sense. And then we can kind of build on that and go to more advanced situations. And we'll talk more about that in part 2 when we cover advanced console and data collection WMS. But we'll touch on them a little bit here today. So we have, for just a general use case, if you are a distribution environment, you have a warehouse, and you feel like it's taking your users way too much time to pick sales documents, you have you're printing out a sales transaction, your user goes out and they handwrite the number that they pick, they handwrite the serial numbers. They're doing manual processing of that data or writing that data down and giving it to somebody else who's then having to manually process that data. That's the perfect environment for data collection. And typically you can go with just DC mobile and DC console. Usually you don't have to go into advanced or the WMS side of it. So that's a perfect environment for implementing data collection, because we can help you print your bin labels. We can help you. And again, using data collection, you don't have to run multi-bin. There are some advantages to doing it that way, and keeping in mind that once you enable multi-bin, you've essentially added an additional layer of complexity to every one of your inventory transactions, because now you have to record a bin, not only with your item number, your site, and your quantity, you now have to specify a bin that you're pulling that out of. So again, it does add some complexity, so we don't want to mislead you in any way there, but there are some good reasons it allows you to segment that warehouse or set up your warehouse in a much more easily controlled way. So let's talk about that real quick. If you look at a warehouse not running multi-bin, so when I look at my inventory and I say, where are my, in this case, HD20, so I have 20 gig hard drives, where are those in my warehouse? The way it is now, if I'm not running multi-bin, I have a warehouse that has all of these items. The warehouse is the level of detail that I can get. Now, GP does offer, in a non-multi-bin environment, they do offer a default bin. So if we jump over to GP real quick and go to quantities and sites, and again, it's not going to show up here because I am running multi-bin. But I have, if I go look at warehouse, which is my site ID, I can put in this bin field. If I'm, and again, this is enabled when multi-bin is disabled. In my environment, I have it turned on, but I can specify a bin field here. And this is, GP doesn't track quantities by that bin field. It does not allow you, it's just a free-form text field. There's nothing, there is no validation, anything like that in that field. So when you turn on multi-bin, then again, I mentioned it does add that additional level of complexity, but what it does is it allows me to then split my warehouse up into much smaller segments. So then I can say, okay, where are my HD20s? And if I flip over to SalesPad, because I always feel like it's easier to look up here, and I go to my inventory lookup and I pull up my HD20, I can see that I have in my warehouse, I have 10 of those on a bin called Doc, and I have 25 of them in a bin called AutoCreate. HD60 is an item that we're going to be playing around with today. So if we take a look at that, so this will be one that we do a lot of our processing with. I currently have 0 in AutoCreate, and that's because I did a bin movement earlier. And I have 20 of them in E01S3. And so again, there are numerous different ways to set up your bins. There are, a lot of people will set them up as a row number, a shelf number, and then a row, aisle, section, shelf. And again, you can make these bin numbers very meaningful, very complex. So again, that's based off of your setup, how you want to set that up. We can help you or talk through, get some consulting help on that as well. But again, it's typically, that's a decision that you have to make from a user standpoint, from a functionality standpoint, if you want to enable multi-bin. With data collection, from our perspective, it makes a lot of sense to enable multi-bin, but again, it's not required. So in my environment, I am running multi-bin. And so it gives me the ability to do a lot of additional, again, it allows me to break up my warehouse and keep that inventory in much more smaller, easier to track segments within or sections within my warehouse. So again, at a very basic level of a data collection user, we look at somebody, I mentioned somebody that's doing a lot of manual processing. Again, handwriting serial numbers, handwriting quantities, having to turn that paperwork over to somebody that then makes sure it's accurate, records those serial numbers. And again, there's a lot of places for error there. So that's where the accuracy side comes in. And it takes time to write things down. especially if you have serial numbers is a great example. If I've got a 15-digit serial number, it's going to be a pain. If I have a sales order that requires 10 items and they are all serialized, it's going to be a pain to write down all those serial numbers. So again, there is some efficiency gains there that you can also make. So that's where both the accuracy side and the efficiency side come in. And so what we would typically look at doing in that type of environment is we would recommend putting in data collection, DC mobile, DC console, help them to get that set up. And then we'd want to make some changes. Let's assume that they're using SalesPad as well. We'd want to make some changes to their workflow to incorporate DC into that workflow. We would want to make some changes and potentially print out a barcoded pick ticket. So if we look at a sales transaction, I've got one that I have set up here. This is one that we'll be working off of. So I have a 100 XLG that has a quantity of 3. This is a serialized item. I also have an HD60, which is non-serialized, and I need 12 of those. But we could add in something like this, a barcoded pick ticket that has the barcode for the document number and a barcode for each one of the items. Now, I've also gone a little bit further, and again, I have multi-bin turned on. And so I've gone as far as to say, okay, show me where I currently have inventory, what bins I currently have inventory in those bins. And so bin E10S4, I have 7 of these 100 XLGs. E01S3, I have 20. So again, there's another spot where efficiency comes into play, because now I can start making suggestions to my picking staff that says, you know what, here's where to go find those items. So we've done things where we've printed out the top 5 bins, or the ones with the most quantity, or we've also gone based off your valuation method and ordered the bins. So show me the top 5 bins based off my LIFO, FIFO valuation method. So whichever inventory is oldest, have it show at the top, have that bin show at the top. So again, there's a lot of different things, and this is on the SalesPad side. So there's a lot of different things that we can do with that document to make it easier for your data collection users to go out and actually pick the product. So that's at a basic level. And so let's use it. We'll use that as a perfect example. And actually, I'm going to step back. We're going to talk a little bit about, I want to work through this from more of a logical standpoint. So inventory coming into my warehouse and then inventory going out of my warehouse. So going back to my basic user, at a basic level, a basic use case. So if I'm selling inventory, the inventory has to come into my warehouse some way. So typically it comes in off of a purchase order, and then I take that purchase order and I need to receive that PO. So that's where, again, we get into some of the DC console functionality here that we have the ability to set up and an ability to help our users. So one of the easiest, or starting at that part of it, so we'll look at receipt processing. And so receipt processing allows me to take a look at my outstanding POs. And so I currently have this filtered to show only POs that are currently released. Those are ones that I'm saying have been sent to the vendor. I'm waiting on that product to come in. So I have 4 POs sitting out there. Now, again, that's just an auto filter row, one of the functions of our grids in data collection. I could clear that, and I see I have a bunch more POs out there. But for me, these are the ones that make sense. And again, we have some things down here that we can do. We can have this manually refresh. If you have a lot of purchasing functionality or purchase orders that are being created daily, again, I can have this set to refresh. I could also specify days out and say, okay, only show me the ones that are expected to be received from today plus 7 days. So I could bump this up to a 7, and I would only, and again, my list of POs would become much more refined. I can also look at days in history. So assuming that product is coming in late, I could also say, okay, show me anything that's 3 days old from today, plus anything that's 3 days out from today. So if things are coming in late or things are coming in early, I have those POs here. And so from here, let's say that a truck came in. I have the ability to then go find the PO that the truck just came in, and or the POs that are on that truck, and I can print that PO from here. Now I've got this set up as a preview. And so we have a pop-up of our PO that shows up. And so again, I have a barcoded PO. I have the PO number itself barcoded. I have the item number barcoded. Typically, that's the extent of, and again, at a basic level, that's what we want to do on the PO. We don't want to start barcoding a lot of additional things. Now we can, but we don't have to. This is the basic that we need. Now we do have lookup functionality that we'll cover in just a second, where you don't even have to barcode it, but this is typically the way we see our users running it. So we have this functionality here. So I could print my PO out, or I can go through and I can print each one of these out, and I would be able to then work off of those printed paperwork. Let's see. So the other option, or the other way that we can do it, I'm going to go ahead and log back into my Handheld here. So let's start looking at receiving. And actually, I do want to step back real quick. So if you are familiar with SalesPad, we have a report designer within SalesPad. With data collection, we also have a report designer in data collection. They are separate reports. So if I have a formatted report in SalesPad, or a formatted purchase order report in SalesPad, it is not going to be visible in data collection. So if we take a look here, I have a report manager. The reports that we can set up in data collection are data collection specific reports. So again, I would have to create a formatted purchase order, barcoded purchase order here in data collection, and it would not be visible in SalesPad. Vice versa, SalesPad PO report would not be visible there either. So we have, sorry, my phone started ringing for some reason. So we have our report designer here, and again, it's exactly the same. So if I go look at my PO report, I can go design this PO. It's exactly the same report designer that we have in SalesPad. So if you're familiar with it, you would be able to easily jump over and use the data collection report designer. So we have that. I wanted to just hit on that to make sure everybody was clear. And again, we have item labels, bin labels, bulk pick tickets, put away reports. So again, there are multiple different reports that we can format on the data collection side, all of that being done within the report designer within data collection. So if we have I've printed off some of my POs, go back over to my receiving handheld. Again, this is what you're seeing on the screen is what you would see if you were running a like this MC75 that I showed you earlier. So we're going to start, let's receive a PO. So I've got a couple of POs here in front of me. I actually printed out some of the paperwork. So if we scan the PO number, it pops in and we have data about that PO. So it shows me the first unreceived line on that PO. And again, we're going by line order. So we're looking simply at line numbers on the or on that purchase order and what's been received or unreceived at this point. And so we can see that there's nothing that's been received. I need to receive 10 of those. So again, I've got barcoded item numbers here. I could step back and I'm going to clear this out. I could do a PO lookup and show me all of my POs. Now, again, I've got some filtering set up on the mobile side. And so there are things that we can do there that filters down which POs show up in this screen. But I have my PO 10103. So technically, I don't have to print paperwork. Or even, further down that line of not wanting to use paper, I have a keyboard on most of the scanners. So I could type in a PO number. If I have receiving paperwork that has my PO number on it, I can type that in. I don't have to. So I could just type in PO 10103. Oops, too many numbers there. And as you'll see, it tells me that PO is not found because I typed it in with an extra couple of digits. And I tab off, and there it shows up. Now, again, it's easier to type because I'm on an actual keyboard. The handhelds have some pretty small keyboards, but again, it can be done. So I have my PO. I have the lines. I can actually click on the item, and I can see how many lines are on this PO. In this case, there's only one. I have 10 ordered, and so I need to receive 10. If we'd already partially received this PO, then I would see this number reduced, and it would show how many are left to receive. So we also have functionality as far as, actually, we'll get a little further, and I'll talk about that in a second. So I put my item number in. We see that this is a non-serial lot tracked item, and then I can specify the quantity that I need to receive. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and do 6. So I can do 6. Now, in my case, I can either pick a bin. I have default bins set up in GP. So right now on the warehouse card in GP, so if I flip back over and go to site and take a look at warehouse and go to bins, I have set a default purchase receipt bin. So I don't have to specify one in data collection at that point. If you do not have this set, data collection is going to throw a fit. It's not going to let you do that. It's not going to let you not specify a bin. So I can set a default here, or I can fill it in on the screen. The way that I have mine set up, and this is so that I can show some additional functionality later on, is that we want to use the dock. I want to receive everything to my dock, and we'll go through the put away process after that. But to begin with, everything's on the dock. And so I've got that set. So I can go ahead and submit that. As long as I have that default bin specified, it's going to go ahead and take that, and receive that into, or create my GP receipt and use that dock as the bin that it's going to receive to. So you'll see that it created receipt 1180. Now, the other thing to make note of is that PO, I didn't get a message that it had been fully received. And the reason is because I had under-received, I'd received less than what was needed. So you'll see now that I have 4 to receive. If I were to go back to that item, and again, I'm just going to pull it out of the lookup, I would be able to see that I have 10 ordered. I still have 4 to receive. So again, I can see on this screen very easily what I have to receive, what I've received already, and so forth. So again, we can turn that off. We can force your users to not be able to look at the items on the PO. We can force them that they have to scan them. Again, we have some controls there with how we can make your users responsible for actually scanning product and not paperwork. So we also have the ability to over receive. So if I said that I want to receive another 6, it's going to allow me to do that. I have my settings turned on, but I also have this turned on as well. So I have it set up to give me a pop-up screen telling me that I am over receiving this line, and then giving me the option of backing out of that. So in this case, I'm going to say yes. And now you can see that that receipt has been fully received. And so again, I have that ability to allow my user to overreceive. I can actually turn that off. I can turn the pop-up off for one, allow them to overreceive, turn the pop-up off, or I can turn it all off. I can say, nope, you can't overreceive. So again, it's based off of your business process, but we have the functionality there to allow you to dictate how you want to run that receiving process. And so we have receipts created. I'm going to go ahead and close my message. If we jump over to GP, go to purchasing, and I go to my receivings transactions. And in this case, I'm just going to back up to my last one. I'll see that I have my PO. So this is that receipt that I just created. I have my PO. I have my item. I have a quantity of 12 because I did 6 and 6. And it builds out that the receipt of that item. If I drill into my item and go to my bins, I see that it put them both in the dock. So again, I did 2 separate transactions. Each one of those would have a dock or the bin specified for them. That's why it shows twice. It doesn't combine them. Had I done it all as one transaction, or the quantity all as one transaction, I would have only seen the bins listed once. But I have this receipt. The other thing I want to point out too is that you'll see we put it in a specific batch. In this case, we call it SalesPad DC. That's telling users that it's a data collection created batch. We have functionality that would allow you to create a separate batch by PO, and the batch name would be the PO number. So if, again, giving you additional control on how you wanted to set up your process. Keep in mind that posting, just like all of our other products, that posting has to happen inside of data collection, or inside of GP. All posting is done on the GP side. So there are some other reasons that we'll talk about later on, but this typically we want somebody that has a little more control from a warehouse management type of, or a warehouse manager, if you will, posting those receipts. Now, if you need that to happen fairly quickly, there are some other products out there that handle auto posting. You would point it to the specific batch and say, post it at this point in time, or every 15 minutes, or anytime the batch is created. So again, there's a couple of different ways that you can handle that. We've got customers doing it a lot of different ways. But as you'll see, we build that GP receipt that then has to be posted. So again, there's additional settings. We're not going to go through all of those. But again, there's additional settings. We can do things like not requiring the user to hit submit. If you fill out all of the fields, it'll auto submit for you. One of the other things I want to talk about that's a neat addition coming out in June is this smart printing piece of it. And it plays really well with receiving. we get a lot of questions from, or a lot of requests from customers saying, you know what, I have generated my receipt. I want to go ahead and spit out item labels, barcoded item labels. Or I have, when I submit my line, I want to go ahead and spit out however many labels I've just received. So if I just received 6 of that product, I want 6 labels to come out. And that's where the smart printing piece comes in. This allows me to do transactional based. And again, if you're familiar with smart printing out of SalesPad, this is a little bit different. It is completely independent of, or completely separate from SalesPad smart printing. This is DC smart printing only. So it's transactional based. So if I look at, let's do PO receiving. I'm going to receive, when I do my receiving into the warehouse, and I can do it user based. In this case, I'm going to do all users. I can specify a report to print. In this case, I want to print an item label, tie it to a specific printer, and I have some print options. So I can do on submit. So that means when I'm back over here and I click submit, it's going to print out a label. And again, you can control, you can say print out only 1 label, or I want it to print out 6 labels because I received a quantity of 6. So we can do it on submit, or we can do it on complete transaction. So the complete transaction, if you remember just a second ago, I fully received the PO, and it gave me that message saying the PO was complete. It's been fully received. That is what ties to this on complete transaction. So at that point, once that PO has been fully received, I could have it spit out a label for every item that I just received off of that PO. So again, that's where the smart printing piece comes into play. There's other pieces, and that's really where we see the most use out of the smart printing, where customers will use it the most, because that's one we get asked for all the time. But there are some other places that it does make sense. So if I wanted to do, let's say I wanted to do picking, and I have customer specific item labels. I could do the exact same thing. On the picking side, I could change that. I could print an item label, map it to my printer. And again, I also have the on submit and on complete. If I'm doing packing and I need packing labels that say what product's in this box, I could do the exact same thing. I would go to the packing side of it. Again, I have typically that item label. And again, you'll see that there's a limited number of report for these functionality. But I might want to print an item label and kick it to a specific printer. Again, there's a lot of different functionality that we can do within that smart printing screen. I'm going to leave it turned off. I don't have a printer set up, so I don't want anything to start spitting out on a printer somewhere. But that's where the smart printing piece comes into play. So I think it's going to be a big hit with a lot of our customers, because it does allow them to automate some of that process. So along with that printing, we'll stay on that printing. We have our receipt that we printed. Back on the receipt processing, if I go back over here, I'll be able to also see that receipt that I created here as well. And so I believe it was number 80. You'll see it's open. That means it's not posted yet. And so I could go here, I could click print, and I don't have a receipt label report formatted. Otherwise it would pop up. But this is another way for me to print item labels. This is the current way that customers are printing item labels if they don't have the smart printing functionality. And again, that's slated to come out in June. We do have some users that are using it currently. But so that means it's a manual process. I've built my receipt. I go back to wherever DC console is running, and I can have it spit out or manually tell it how many labels to print, and have it spit out a copy of each one of those labels. So that's one way to do it. We have a question that just came in from Harvey. So he asked, can the label printed be designated to only print for specific inventory items? So yes, with a little bit of work. So assuming there is logic for you to say, again, assuming you're using smart printing, in the printed report, we have a lot of functionality within the printed report that allows us to add some rules or scripting on that printed report. So if you have logic that says this item will always have a printed label, this item will never have a printed label, we can do scripting within the report that says, okay, cancel the print of these items, or any items that are set up to not require a label. On this side, so if we flip back, if we look at my screen and we look at the receipt section, when I go to print here, and let me set up one of those reports real quick because it'll make it a little easier to see. So in that screen that shows up, let's see, we need a receipt label. And again, this is the default. There's nothing special about it. But if I go back over here and print, so on this screen, I can see what I did for each one of those. And so again, not a great example for your question because these are both the same item number. But if I said, you know what, I only wanted the 1 to print, so I want none to print here and I need 6 to print here, I can change those around. So from a manual processing side, I have that option to do it as well. Again, going back to the smart printing, there would have to be a way that you could define logic to say these items get a label, these items or this group of items do not. And we can do it multiple different ways. We can do it off item class. We can do it off of, you know, quantity has to exceed this. Again, there's all types of different ways that we can handle that and handle the printing side of that. It's a good question though. All right. So that's how we would manually print labels if we weren't using smart printing. And again, the label design, you go into your report manager, you have full control over what you want your item labels to look like. So you can set this up. Again, it's our report designer. So you can set it up. You can add fields, remove fields. We have customers that have logos on their labels. There's a lot of different things that you can do with the design of your item label. And again, if you have specific sizes, you can control all of that and all of that set up here within your report designer. So again, I am a very big fan of our report designer. You can do a lot with it. We also have bin labels that you can set up here as well. So again, I mentioned the print report or the report designer here. So we could go in and we can add, so this is going to be my bin label. And again, you can get very specific. I want this to be my warehouse bin label. So maybe I have, if you look at the way that the Fabricam company is set up within GP. So I have a bin label there. Maybe I want to have a north bin label. Maybe I want to have a south bin label, and those won't need to be different. So I can also set those up here. And again, I can print bin labels. I can go in and say, okay, show me every one of my bins. I can go back and say, okay, I want to look at everything just within warehouse. And I need a label for every one of these. And so I'm going to print that. And it pops up and allows me to print using that bin label. And again, there's nothing special about these. But again, I can have full control over what my bin labels look like and the size of them and so forth. Harvey also asked another question. He wants to know, can you print multiple labels at the same time? Again, we have control to do that within smart printing. You can specify how many copies to print. We can also do additional scripting on the printer report on that item label that says, again, based off of this item, we want it to loop through the item and say if there's, if I receive 6, I need 6 of these labels. And so we can have it spit out 6 of the labels. So again, it's all in how you design the report from the manual side. So back over here on the receipt processing, I do have that functionality here as well because I can control how many of those. So that's what this column is. It's a little hard to read the name, but it's number, we'll take serial number off. So it's number of labels to print. So I can have control. If I want to print 18 for some reason, maybe I want 3 copies of the label in every box. I have control over how many I print. And again, this is from a manual standpoint. So I would have to manually type in that quantity. This can get time consuming, of course. If you have 300 items here that you just received, then it becomes a bit more of a pain to handle it this way. But again, it can be done. We have customers that do it. And so when I hit OK, wherever that pops up on the preview, so now I have, should be 36 pages. So if we see right down here, I've got 1 of 36. And so I've got 36 labels that it just spit out. So yes, that can be done, and it can be done in multiple different ways. So we have our receipt printing. We've created the receipt. I'd have to go into GP and I'd post that receipt. After the receiving process, and again, I'm trying to work through a logical order of getting inventory into my warehouse and then taking it out of my warehouse. So after the receipt printing side of it, and again, I received everything into my dock, into the dock bin in my warehouse. And so from there, I'd want to do a put away report. And so so we have a put away, and I'm going to do the specific PO. Actually, I'm not. I'm just going to run this. And so I've got all of these items that have been received. I've got a bunch out there. So I'm going to just take these couple POs that I have here on the top, just so you can get a good idea of what the report looks like. But otherwise, I might want to multi-select everything on the screen and print that. So click search. Oops, I wanted to click print instead of search. Click the wrong button. So that pops up. I get this screen. I have a put away report set up in my report designer. And so I run that, and this is what I get. And so what I've got is I've got a printed report now that shows me where my inventory currently is. The barcode ties to my item number. And so then this is the bin that I currently have inventory in, and I can see how much inventory is there. Doesn't mean this is the bin I have to put it in. This is just a recommended bin because this is where I currently have my inventory. So a lot of companies want to keep their inventory grouped together. And so using this, I could print this off, go back over to, and I timed that on my handheld here. So go back over here, log in again, the timeout period. That is a setting within DC that you can turn on, turn off, or increase the time, decrease the time. I would recommend increasing it. So again, I received everything into my dock. I now need to do my put away, bin transfers. That's really what I'm doing. So this is a barcoded value. So I could scan in that item number. And so if we take a look at, I'm going to use this one right here. So I could go back over and scan in my item number. I see that it's not serial or lot tracked. I'm going to move it from the dock. And then again, I don't have it in my dock right now. I've already moved this one around. But I would have it, I could actually see where it's at. So here's where I have it. I've moved it already out of the dock. But I would be able to choose where I wanted to select it from and where I'm going to put it to. In the to field, notice we don't barcode the bin on the put away report. We want your users to scan that shelf barcode label. So we want them to manually have to do that. We don't want them to fake it by using paperwork. So again, the way that I have this set up is this is simply sorted by the default sort that I have pulled in on my screen. I don't have any sort around item number or bin to put it away in bin order. We can do all of that. Again, it's just how we format that printed report. So that's where the put away, we have a number of customers that do that receiving process into the dock, and then from there they do a put away. Again, it speeds up receiving, but it does add, you have to have someone put that inventory away. So again, they have to put it away at some point anyway. There are other things that you could look at. So if you have sales commitments, so let's say your POs are tied to sales orders, you get the report out of GP already that says, you know, this is this received product. When you post the receipt in GP, this received product is dedicated to this sales order. So again, we could take a look at that. We could help increase some efficiency on that as well. So there are other pieces there. I know it's not an ideal world. Is it comes in, I receive it all into the dock, and then I have time to go put it away, and then I have time at some point later on to do the picking. So let's talk about picking. So again, I showed you the barcoded pick ticket. So we flip back over to DC. I'm going to clear out of this, jump back to my main menu on the handheld. So picking is a big piece of this as well. And again, this is where we really see a lot of increased accuracy is probably the biggest thing here. And so I've got some sales transactions. I have a sales doc ID set up in GP that uses separate fulfillment process. So that means I save the transaction, save the sales document. It is allocated, but not fulfilled because DC is going to handle the fulfillment side of it. So I've got two sales transactions here, or I've got a sales transaction with two line items on it. Scan my doc number. Now we can have this set up to auto suggest the next item. In this case, I don't have that. I have it to where I can do a lookup. Again, my barcoded or my sheet has barcoded item numbers. So I'm going to receive the HD60. I see that it is not serial lot tracked. I have a bin that I need to pull that out of. And so I don't have that barcoded. Ideally, the user is going to go to the shelf. They're going to scan the bin. In this case, I can do a lookup. I can see where or what bin and what quantity is available there. I can also print it. I think we looked at that earlier, have it show up as on the printed report as well. So again, there's a couple of different ways to get to this data. I'm going to select the bin because I don't have a barcode for it anywhere, and I'm going to specify the quantity to pick. Now, I do want to show you error handling. So I'm going to put 15. I only need to pick 12. Submit it. you cannot overpick. And there's no setting to turn this on or off. This is simply saying GP does not allow you to overfulfill a sales transaction. So we're not going to allow you to overpick. It won't allow your users to overpick. So again, they can underpick, and they can pick it in multiple. If they have to go to separate bins, then they're going to have to do separate submits. But I can do my quantity of 12, submit it. And then I'm going to pick my second line item, which is a serialized line item. So I have my 100 XLG. I see that there are serial numbers. This shows me how many serial numbers I have fulfilled already. In this case, none. So I don't have any of my barcoded or my serial numbers barcoded. I have very simple serial numbers here as well. It makes it a little bit easier for me to do this type of demonstration. So I'm going to pick 2. You'll see that it now jumps up to a 1. I need 3. So I go back to this one. You also notice I don't have to specify a bin here either. Now these could be in different bins, but the bin is tied to the serial number. And so when you pick the serial number, we know exactly which bin that's coming out of because it's a one-to-one relationship. So I've picked my quantity of 3. I submit it. And now it's going to tell me that this document, it should tell me anyway, that this document has been fully picked, assuming I haven't timed out. So fully picked, data collection. I think I had it tied to some workflow, so I don't have it set up. So we have the ability with data collection now to tie into our SalesPad workflow. So again, this is one of the benefits of having both SalesPad and data collection. I can tie it to my SalesPad workflow. Upon completion of fully picked, I can then have it forwarded through my SalesPad workflow and run workflow rules, evaluate workflow rules, run smart printing out of SalesPad. Maybe I want a packing slip to automatically print out somewhere. So again, we now have this integrated into SalesPad workflow, assuming you have it set up, which obviously I don't. So, but it's fully picked. This is where the smart printing in DC could come into play as well. We could do something with a submission or on submit of an individual line item or on the full, the completion of that entire document. So again, we have that functionality there that we can do with picking and then with workflow. Now, on top of picking, we also have functionality for packing. Now, this allows me to then do package level detail and specify what quantity of items goes into what package. So if I scan my sales document, I can then define a package name. We'll talk about this next week in our second series. But I can add a new package here. In Advanced Console and in WMS, I have the ability to actually set up predefined packages. And so I could do that as well and specify or pull a predefined package here. So if I have predefined boxes, I would then specify my item. Again, not serial lot tracked. I have picked 12. How many am I going to pack? So maybe only 5 of these go in a box or can go into this box. I can submit that, and I'm still building out package 1. And so I can get 5 in that box, and then this is serial lot controlled. And so I need to specify what serials I fulfilled go into this box. And so I'm going to put 2 of these serial numbers in there. All right, so now I'm on to my next package, and I bumped it once too many. I need to go back to package 2. So package 2, I'm going to put my other item, the remaining quantities of my items. So you'll see that I've already packed 2 of these and 5 of the HD60s. And so I'm going to go ahead and pack the final serial number. And again, I do have to select it. So that's going into that box. And then now I'm going to pack my remaining quantity of my HD60. And so I should have 7 of those left to pack. And so now my document has been fully packed. And again, I can tie it into workflow. I can have it automatically move on to whatever the next step is in my workflow. And again, this is looking at SalesPad workflow. So this has given me package level detail. So if I'm doing things like EDI transactions, then I now have package level detail that I can send out my ASN with carton detail on that ASN. So it gives me that functionality to build out that data. We can also integrate picking and packing, so it's all one step. So you can pick and pack all at the same time out of the picking screen, so I don't have to go to 2 screens. A lot of times we'll see the picking step and the packing step being done by 2 different people. So we'll have a person doing picking, it'll go to a staging area, and that person does packing and potentially shipping as well. So again, there's a time for it or a reason for it to be separated, but there's also an argument to be made that you can have the 2 at the same step, and we can turn that on. A couple other things I want to hit real quick on the console side. We also have a bulk pick ticket, and a bulk pick ticket is simply that. I mean, it gives you the ability to print out a report that says, here's everything that I need to be picked. And ideally, this is going to be formatted and sorted in your bin order. So if you labeled your bins appropriately, I've got all these selected. So we'll just preview my default report. So we can see I need 15 100 XLGs to be picked across all of these sales documents, or in this case, it's all the same sales document. So this is meant to be, your pickers are not using the actual handhelds, because our picking is done at a document by document level. There are some things that we are looking at to enhance the bulk picking a little bit. It's not available yet. We'll let everybody know when that does become available. But for right now, your pickers would go through and pick everything that they need. Again, they're not caring about the individual document. They're just picking total quantity. So I need to go out and I need to pick 5 of these 40X IDEs. I need to pick 6 of these phone cords. So they're just picking total quantities. They then take that to a staging area, and that's where it's broken down to individual orders. And maybe at that point is where the fulfillment, the picking and the packing happens, where they're breaking it down to, okay, 1 of these goes to this sales document, 2 of these goes to this, and actually separating those and putting those in that staging area. That's typically where we see that done. So that's the bulk pick ticket. And again, the report is designed and controlled within data collection. I'm going to speed up a little bit. I don't want to run out of time. We've got about 5 minutes left. So I want to make sure I hit everything in DC Mobile. So you'll see, we're not going to show every transaction here, but we'll talk about them a little bit. We also have the confirm receipt, so we can back up to the receiving side of it. We do have the ability to give you a separate confirmation step for receiving. So in the confirm receipt screen, they'll go into it and they can confirm increased quantity, decreased quantity of what someone said they received through the receiving screen. So that's where the confirm receipt side of it comes in. We'll talk about this in more detail as well in next week's session, because there's some things that we've included in advanced console that allows for some additional receipt processing. We have our inventory transactions here, so we can do site transfers here. We talked about bin transfers already, and we have inventory adjustments. Again, those are GP functions that most people are familiar with already, but they can be done by the handheld. Again, scanning items, scanning bins, and so forth. So one thing to point out on bin transfers, we do track an audit log of bin transfers. But we track it in our own table. So we have been doing the bin transfer audit log for quite some time. We implemented it before GP came out with it. Now that GP has come out with it, and they have their own tables for writing that, we are currently not writing to that table. Again, we are leaving this in our table. We can do quick reports to allow for reporting out of that bin audit transfer or bin audit log. Part of the reason for that is every one of our customers aren't on the newer versions of GP that have the bin transfer log there. So we're going to leave it in our tables for now. We also support the shipping module. So this is more of a confirmation step. It allows you to essentially confirm what's been picked and what's going onto a truck. So it's more for I'm doing LTL type shipments. I want to make sure that what I load on the truck is what I said I picked for this order. And so you're confirming essentially item quantities at that point. You're not doing anything down to the bin level. Or even down to the serial lot level. It's simply the item that you're picking and the quantity that you're putting on the truck of that item. Stock counts, that's using the stock count functionality out of GP. So you would set up your stock count sheet in GP. You would start your stock count sheet in GP, and then you would be able to go in, and the stock count screen is simply filling in your stock count sheet. So as opposed to someone that you print out the report out of GP that you get, someone has to go in and manually write down the counts. Then it comes back into the office, and somebody then has to key in those counts to build your variances or to have everything match up. This eliminates that whole step of somebody writing it down and bringing it back and somebody rekeying it. What you do from this screen is you specify your count ID or your count sheet, and you go through and you count the items that are on that sheet and the quantities that you say you found. Notice we don't display the quantity that we say you have. We actually make your user submit a quantity, so that way it's, there's some honor there to what they're doing. The other piece is returns. So this is SOP returns. So we do have return processing. Currently, this is based off of you creating a return off of the customer card in SalesPad. So if we were to go here to a customer card, create a new return, and let's say it's a 100 XLG. The reason we do it this way and have it required here is because we don't specify serial numbers at this point. I can't say what serial numbers were returned. And so that's where this would come into play. So we would go pull in, pick up that return document. I probably have a bunch in here. So if we look at this guy right here, I could then say, okay, how many 100 XLGs and what are the serial numbers that got returned back to me? And that puts those back onto that return document and allows that to then, when I post it, those are the serial numbers that are then attached to that return at the time of posting that are put back in inventory. So again, it works off of returns created off of the customer card in SalesPad. It will not work off of a return created from a posted invoice in SalesPad, because those you automatically get to pick what serial numbers, and so it already has the serial numbers associated with it. So just keep that in mind. The other things that we have here is the manufacturing transaction entry, and I'll talk about that a little more detail next week in our part 2, because that's a little more of an advanced piece. So that's covered, I think, everything that I wanted to hit. The only other piece that I didn't talk about was the mobile license manager. So our mobile devices, we do license by mobile users. And so I do have the mobile license manager here. So I can see, I've actually connected with 2 different emulators, and I can see a license that was generated for both of those. So again, I can have control over who gets a license. I can reset the activation. I can handle all of that from this screen. I don't have to call SalesPad and have them reset licenses or anything like that. This gives me the functionality to do that. So, all right. Sorry we had to speed up there at the end. I wanted to get everything in. But if you guys have questions between now and next week, you're definitely welcome to send those in. You can email support. You can email marketing. You can... again, call your sales rep. There's a lot of different ways that we can get that information over to us, and we'll get those questions answered for you. So I appreciate your time today. Thanks for sitting in with me. We'll do this again next week. I believe it's next Wednesday at the same time, 12 Eastern, and we'll cover DC Now, and we'll also cover DC WMS and the additional functionality that you have there, and then also a couple extra pieces there on the DC mobile side that makes sense to tie into Advanced Console and then to WMS. So again, appreciate your time. This will be available on YouTube, so you can watch it again, because I know everybody had that much fun. So, all right, appreciate it. Thanks. See you later.